Make a start. Very warm welcome to Philosophy Live. My name's Christine Lambie, and today we will be considering the environment. Now, this is an interview today, so we will be taking some questions from viewers. So please do put some questions in chat as we go along. Now, our guest speaker today is chairman of WRAP, that's Waste and Resources Action Programme, working on the causes of climate change, pollution and waste, and particularly promoting a circular economy. He's actually recently written a book called Sustainable Advertising, if you can think of such a thing. Sebastian Munden was CEO of Unilever UK and Ireland until 2022. He's also a student and a tutor in the School of Philosophy and Economic Science. So good morning, Sebastian. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Christine. Morning, everybody.
So let's get straight to it. We mentioned this in the biography there, circular economy. What actually is the circular economy? Can you just explain this?
Well, yes, if you think about nature, nature goes through a cycle of kind of growing, flourishing, going to seed, and then dying back and returning to the materials from which it came. And indeed, most human activities over the centuries did the same. But with industrialization, and particularly the rise of the fossil fuel economy, something changed, which was that things got used and then created waste. And that waste didn't necessarily return easily around that cycle. And then products started to get made where the materials being used in the product had a lifetime which exceeded the usefulness of the product to the person who used it. And also, the products became designed in a way that they couldn't be repaired, taken apart, and the pieces either reused or sent back to where they came from. So the circular economy really is about returning the economy to the natural cycle of everything can be taken apart, reused, broken down. And if you think about it, it's also about responsibility, which is taking full responsibility for making something for what happens when it's finished its useful life. Or if you choose something or buy something, taking the same responsibility.
That sounds just like working with nature, really, doesn't it? Coming back to this circularity. What would you say is the philosophical underpinning of that? We're here on Philosophy Live. Can you relate this to philosophy, or how?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, most traditions make a very special point about stewardship, and stewardship, and if you like, very close to the act of creation and human beings' responsibility for, if you like, each microcosm of creation. In the non-dual tradition, I think it really is at the heart of the concept of seeing one's cosmic responsibilities and not, as it were, dumping on others the consequences of poor choices or the choices that we make, to put it maybe slightly more neutrally. Because inevitably there's a consequence beyond our immediate situation. And I think that the non-dual tradition is all about that awareness of the entire system, of the whole, and feeling one's part of it.
Yeah. Let's take a particularly knotty problem that probably everybody deals with is clothes. What about clothes? Do we buy too many clothes? Duh.
Well, yes. So what's interesting here, so just a few stats. So the good people at WRAP, one of the things they do amazingly is collect data. They're the people who go, by the way, through people's refuse and do composition analysis to work out what people are throwing away. On this case, it was a slightly more glamorous job. It was going through people's wardrobes. So on average, people own about 118 garments. 26% of them, or as I would say, roughly a quarter, basically don't get worn. And about 350 thousand tons of used clothes go to landfill every year. If you want to kind of proportionalize that, if there is such a word, that's about half the volume of new clothes made every year. So if you think every year we're making about 700,000 tons of new clothes and 350,000 tons of clothes are going to landfill at the same time. That's the scale of the challenge. But in terms of the opportunities, I mean, clearly the opportunities are to reframe durability. But also, one of the interesting things about the modern world is a lot of people try things on and send them back. That's actually about £7 billion worth in the UK of clothes that basically then don't get resold. So effectively what that means is that the customers are showing the retailers, sometimes maybe they just wear it once and then send it back. So things like rental models, in the WRAP survey shows, quite a high appetite. Over half the people in the survey said, yeah, I'm interested in rental models. I don't have to own clothes. Also, that replicates the fun of having new stuff, but without just filling my wardrobe or filling landfill.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, there's the question, even if you wear something to death and you've worn it 150 times, it's still going to end up in landfill, isn't it? If you've worn something and now it's got holes and the seams are falling apart, what else are you supposed to do? Turn it into cleaning cloths or,
Now, of course, that happens a lot, turning it into cleaning cloths. But unfortunately, the world's demand for cleaning cloths is considerably lower than the amount of garments coming on the market, which I know to people in the philosophy school will come as a surprise. But that is, of course, the truth. So you're right. I mean, actually, there are a couple of things, which is there are a lot of garments that don't get to that point before they get thrown away. They're all being taken out. So maybe about 10-15% of garments can be resold as garments, repaired. There's amazing things. Repair services are coming back. A lot of people know that you can go to your local dry cleaner for repairs, but also there's some amazing startups now offering repair services, online and stuff like that. But I think the first thing to say is that WRAP's working with the UK Fashion and Textile Council, investing in sorting equipment, because you can actually sort the garments first time. The second thing then is textile to textile recycling. So turning garments back into textiles. So cotton, obviously polyester is very straightforward to recycle. It has other problems being a petrochemical product, but it can at least be melted down and respun. So these are some of the activities that can happen.
I've seen that. It's very impressive, actually. I've seen some clips on that. It's fantastic. So let's take an overview. How are we doing on this? Are we doomed? We see a lot of doom mongering. Are we doomed?
No, I'm definitely not doomed. But the clock is really ticking now. And I think, and one of the reasons I wrote the book, Sustainable Advertising, with my colleague, Matt Bourne, was because actually we just need a lot more people to change some very specific behaviors. And we've been talking about clothes, but also, for instance, the traveling, commuting, how we heat and light, energy. There are a handful of, as it were, sort of small choices, but with big consequences. If we can accelerate the number of people who make those choices, and our thought was, listening to the environmental movement and all the new startups, what they're really trying to think about is, how do I become scale player? How do I go from being a brilliant idea and beautifully small to influencing lots of people? And then we look at the advertising industry, and a lot of people who work there who want to be a force for good, they want to do something useful, and they're thinking, well, why don't you call us? Because we can put all those skills and techniques that we're using at the moment to a good cause. And a good example of that might be, Christine, for many years, the ITV show Love Island was very much pushing, if you like, the fast fashion. And all the people on it kind of look quite similar. What was interesting is ITV realized that, they were having this unintended influence. and partnered with eBay to try and show how pre-loved clothes, as they call it, could also have a similarly positive influence. And this whole sector, was taking off anyway, but that really exploded it. Vinted, for instance, listed 800 million items in 2022. They reckon the European pre-loved clothes market will be worth about 34 billion euros by 2025. And that is growing 11 times faster than, fashion stores. So I think there is something that people can do. You have these choices. The moment will come when you think about, changing the car or whether to get a car, how we heat and light our houses, but also in the kind of food we buy, the clothes we buy. All of these can make a difference. And if we can scale that, the combination of all these small choices made by millions of people can have the possibility of transforming the economy faster.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to repeat this in case anyone is watching now who wasn't here at the beginning. Do put any questions into chat, because I hope we'll have time to fit in a question or two. Let's go on. I think in a way you've touched on this. As individuals, what can we do? So make better choices about heating, clothes, holidays, and so on. Do you want to add anything to that? I guess for individuals, you might think, oh, I'm just making a couple of choices. How is that going to help? And it's persuading people it does help, isn't it?
It is. But also I think it's very important that the responsibility in the end is on the companies who are producing these things. And the good news is that in many sectors, there are companies, big and small, trying to make the changes. So I don't think citizens should feel that it's all on us, because it's going to be a combination. The companies can't do it if we don't come along. We can't do it if they don't make it easy. So what we're saying in our book to the companies is make it easy. And in the end, of course, about 15% of people probably want to do things for consciously environmental reasons. 15% of people probably definitely don't. They're sort of almost think it's a bit of a hoax. But that leaves a lot of people in the middle who just can be nudged along. And I think one of the realizations over the last few years is it doesn't matter why people make better choices. You don't have to make better choices for better reasons. And coming back to the clothes, the fact that it's very unique, it's a unique garment, that you can get unique garments at high street prices. That's a great reason. You don't have to do it because you think it's going to save materials and not end up in landfill, for whatever reason you wish.
Yeah. So I know you're really passionate about this subject anyway. What is one of the most exciting or promising projects you've actually seen or worked on?
Well, I mean, as you said earlier, I used to work at Unilever, and factories are very expensive, and to change a factory is very expensive, and sometimes the business cases are hard to create. But one of the companies that I consult with have some very clever technology where they essentially put pipes into the chimneys of factories and extract the emissions that would have gone up into the atmosphere and turn those emissions into water, food grade CO2, medical grade bicarbonate of soda. And those products can then go back into the products that are being made either at the same factory or at another one, or go into animal feed in the case of bicarbonate of soda, which also helps suppress the sort of methane emissions of cows. And I just love this. This company, the emissions capture company, is such a sort of simple solution. And most of the technology is standard off the shelf with just a few very clever parts. But actually it's transformative because it becomes affordable, and you're making ingredients out of effectively the waste stream of previous products. I mean, it's, for me, I get massively excited about that because it's such a practical solution at scale that's being rolled out literally across the world as we speak.
Yes, that's wonderful to hear, and presumably that sort of movement will accelerate, as people get more excited about it and more demanding of it, really, isn't it?
I think the amount of innovation, new companies coming into this space is also very exciting. When you think about it, productivity, which is the sort of great hope of the economy, which is to increase productivity, that's essentially creating more value with the same amount of people and stuff. Well, that bears an uncanny resemblance to the sustainable economy, which is about creating more value with less stuff. So I think, if you see these two things as essentially the same, you create an economy which is more conscious of its entire supply chain and of the repercussions of choices that are made. But also it can bring prosperity as well.
It's win-win. So I had hoped to see some questions, but I think maybe people are a little bit dazzled by all these facts. Let's come to a final thought. How we normally finish with how can philosophy help us today? How can philosophy help us today save the environment? What would you say?
Yes, I think where philosophy helps is that sort of consciousness of the whole and being aware of the actions and choices that we make in the whole, and maybe some of the unintended consequences of our choices becoming more apparent to us. So I would say tread lightly and be aware of the whole. And I think that will just help us, make the better choice. And that would be good for the environment. I think it's good to
Good. So we had a slight connection problem there, but we were coming to the end anyway. So I've taken Sebastian out of the stream. Thank you, Sebastian, for joining us and sharing your enthusiasm. That brings us to the end for today, and actually the end for this term. We'll be starting again on Friday, 3rd of May, so be sure to join us then. If you've enjoyed this interview, please like it and share it, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. So have a wonderful break. Thanks for joining us, and tread lightly. Bye for now.